to 2.5 hours to get there, right? And therefore, again, organizations came in and told the government saying, please tell us how we can help get this flyover done quickly. Please tell us how we can get the traffic police. Okay, we will pay for more traffic police. We will ensure that there is an entire infrastructure which is created to make sure that this flyover comes up quickly. So, again, I'm saying the same thing, that there is, the difficult call really is, where is the line you draw before you say that this is my job and this is somebody else's job. Sometimes being sustainable means that you have to do much more beyond what your corporate duty is to ensure that the ecosystem around you is created. Today at SVP, let me talk a little bit about SVP, which is the Social Venture Partners. It's the largest group of philanthropists created in the Silicon Valley. They were, again, typical startups, IT, people who grew rich very, very quickly, started asking the question and saying that there is an entire social sector which no one is touching, an entire social sector which we believe is extremely inefficiently handled, and it is not enough to give them money. I think it's one of the very few organizations which says that the best of people will join this initiative to not just give out a check in terms of philanthropy, but actually give in hours and put in time to work with the social sectors. So what do? We have about 200 people in India today. We have 4 chapters, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, and Bangalore, which is working on and about 184 people who are CEOs, their direct reports, very, very successful people who have come in to say, let's adopt a few NGOs, understand what they need, and let's see what is the help that we can give them in terms of capability. Not just in terms of money. The money is also, of course, there in ensuring grants. But the differentiator is in doing capability. So, for example, my experience in NGOs, and I'm really quite ashamed to say that I had no idea of the social sector in that much detail as I did in the last 2 years, and found that these are exactly like other organizations, except that they do not have the kind of exposure that global organizations had in terms of how technology can help them. How, an example was given in terms of, reduce manpower cost, which is, something which we commonly hear. The power of technology to reduce those kind of costs, not because of cost, but because of efficiency, is huge. So what are some of the things that we do? We bring in IT into these NGOs. We offer them, how do you create a business plan, basics. How do you create an employee value proposition? How do you create a group which is which can do brand building for you? Everything from the best of professionals which are available across the country. And one of the things which they keep coming back to us and saying is that we have a lot of funds today, thanks to the many foundations and thanks to the CSR policy which has been introduced, but we just don't know how to use this efficiently. We don't know how to create impact in the most efficient fashion. And if there are business heads who can come in and do a project management for us, or teach us how to manage our projects more efficiently, that would be invaluable. So a lot of times, CSR, having just a CSR wing in an organization is not enough. Involving your employees, and I can't stress it enough. I mean, if there are enough HR heads here, to go back and involve and give time of employees instead of money is absolutely invaluable. It does 2 things. One is it provides a tremendous kind of competence to those NGOs, which they really require in areas where they don't have expertise. And 2, it's a great employee value proposition. Organizations which believe that a company has a heart, which will allow you to do things which create social impact, are much better bonded than those who believe that a company is working just for creating money. So one of the things that we do from SVP is to work with organizations to help us create what we call as SVP fellows. So put up job postings, help us put up job postings which are required in the NGOs. Allow your employees to come out for anything from 6 months to a year to come and work with these NGOs on specific goals which will be monitored, and then they can come back into the system. We have gone back to find out what the difference it does to those employees, both in terms of before and after, and it has been tremendous. The way when they come back, there is a very high sticky factor. When they come back, they are energized, because sometimes lack of purpose in organizations can be dampening. So it becomes a win-win for both sectors. So I want to leave you with the thought of saying that at the end of the day, if we can create, even whether you are part of HR, being part of the CSR Foundation or even otherwise, to look for skills in your organizations which can be then working with the social sector, it will be an absolutely tremendous value add which your organization can add. Thank you.
Like Nandita said, good morning seems to be very redundant now, but I must confess that I am going to deviate from what I wanted to speak. So Aarti, you're in for a surprise. The main reason being 4 people have spoken before me, and I would like to categorically disagree with all 4 of them. First, the use of the word NGO. I think this imaginary, if somebody walks up to me, a stranger walks up to me and says, "Are you a man?" And I answer in all seriousness, "No, I'm not a woman." Would you agree to that? Saying what I am not is a misrepresentation of what I truly am. And I think, for heaven's sake, stop using this word NGO henceforth. It is not a true representation of what the civil society space is all about. We are different. We might also be non-governmental in our spirit and action, but we are very much governmental in service delivery. Let's not run away from it. So what makes you think that we are not something? We are something. So that's point 1. The second point is this misconception that NGOs are inefficient. What the hell, do you think corporates are efficient? I can tell you I am funded heavily by corporates. And by the time I get my checks from the corporates, the biggest corporates in this country, I have to move heaven and earth for that. If you are efficient, I didn't have to do that. So let's say each of us have our strengths. Let's not even start off saying that you are weak in this and, oh, I'm God, I'm going to come and help you. Let me tell you, I can promise you I'm the best NGO in this country. And Rockefeller Foundation, Edelweiss Foundation, and the government of India think so, then they can't be wrong. And my operational overhead is 4%. Show me a corporate in this country, we can operate at 4% efficiency. I'll be the first NGO which is going to use SAP to enhance my 4% efficiency into something better. So let's not talk of what somebody is and somebody is not, and here I am to help God. I play God and help you out. Let's keep all that aside and start off simplistically. How much of development you corporates know? What makes you experts on social sector? The number of conferences that, like Aarti said, every week I get an invitation. I have stopped attending conferences. It's a joke. Because of my love and affection for Satwa and Aarti and her team, I came here today. Because it provokes me a lot to get into a conference and be told, you are useless, you are not efficient. What do you mean? You come and ask me of impact assessment of quarter to quarter of education? That shows how little you know of education. Why don't you accept it? No, let's be very clear. Education is a generational process. Development is a generational process. I teach development. I teach development at many places, Kennedy School including, and we haven't even figured out what the hell is the definition of development even today. And then we come here and say, I'm an expert on social sector because the last 2 years CSR law has come in and I'm going to tell you what to do in the field. I can tell you NGOs are of various sizes. They're very differential. Some are driven by religion, some are driven by faith, some are driven by ideology, some are driven by sectoral competence. No, you haven't even figured that out yet. So let's accept that the only way forward is for all of us to work together, understanding that we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and only when we complement each other's strengths can we truly make a meaningful difference in this country. So that being said, now I responded to those 4, now getting into my talk. So now let me get into my talk. What exactly would I want to share with you? I want to share something very fundamental based on my own 3 decades of experience and at least a decade of research into this. And I've been part of a lot of these governmental committees in writing these laws, etc. So I know where we are, where do we enter, what happened. And a lot of research the last 2 years and specifically in partnerships. And so I want to just talk of 3 things before I conclude and then leave it to the fireside chat to get more stuff out. First is let's understand ourselves. And I'm going to talk in the Indian construct because a lot of my work is both US and India. I'd like to limit it to just the Indian construct. Let's understand development in this country. Whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, is none of our business actually. It's neither the corporate nor the NGO. So what partnership are we talking about? It actually is the government's job. That's what our constitution says. Now, if we truly subscribe to the Indian constitution, which we all should, it's one of the finest documents that I have ever studied. The government of India pretty much promises everything to its citizens. Now, because the government has failed, that is where a new generation of civil society groups like me cropped up and said, I am now going to compliment the government in what they do. And including people like me, 25 years ago, I believed the government is useless, they shouldn't even exist, and I can do everything that the government should not be doing at all. And I believed that I could supplant the government. It was possibly the most immature thinking that I had. And today I believe you can never supplant the government. You can only supplement the state. And if we think of anything else, we are idiots. And policy, remember, policy changed from 91. And this changing policy driven by the constitutional mandate is what gave corporates a lot of money to sit upon, first of all. And when you had more money, you paid more taxes. But do you ever have the courage to go back to government and say, what are they doing with their taxes? When you want to talk of inefficiency in the NGO sector, what stopped you the last 30 years when you are paying so much of taxes to ask about the inefficiencies in the government sector? You ask about reduction of corporate taxes from 30% to 26% to 24%. Have you ever asked the government, what the hell do you do with my 24%? We have never done that. We never talk of inefficiencies in the state. The transactional cost of government is 86%. And we have never stopped to question them how inefficiently they use our taxational revenues. And suddenly our citizenship wakes up. My latest book is called I the Citizen. Because suddenly we all become citizens and then talk about social sector wasting money and we have to protect it. And what do you give? You give 16,000, 20,000 crores. Last year, the government of India's expenditures on just primary education, I don't even know if all of you people know it, it was 76,000 crore rupees. What are you talking about? 68% of the money that you people have spent was on education. Why do you have to spend at all when 76,000 rupees is already being spent? On the other hand, if you have decided to look into the inefficiency of the government and its implementation, you might have possibly saved them a lot of money. So we have to really, really stop and ask ourselves, do we know ourselves? Do we know our strengths? Do you understand the sector properly? So the first is government. They are mandated to do what they're doing. Civil society stepped in. Corporates stepped in, some through the foundation, some through funding. And what we forgot in this entire bargain, except for, talking, Ravi, right? We had a chat and he was talking about, Rajkumar was talking about involving community. The first time I heard the word community in a corporate meeting. We completely forget that the most important people for whom all of us exist is the community. And have you ever stopped to ask them, how efficient are they? They're actually more efficient. Otherwise, India couldn't have managed with demonetization, let me tell you. Come to Indian villages. You people scream your heads off for standing in line on ATMs. Think of the life where there is no ATM at all, which is most of India. We never thought about it. And how have they coped? How little noise they have made. And they're still running. That's the beauty of India. We always never understand there's 2 Indias here, rural and urban. And the problem is urban India thinks it knows all the answers to the problems of rural India. That's where the problem comes. And that's what we have to be clearly thoughtful about. So I see 4 major players now. The state, the citizen or community, the civil society groups, and the corporate sector. And unless all 4 of us come together in a synergistic partnership, can we truly make a meaningful difference? But for that, there are 2 other things I want to speak about and then end. The next is understanding development. Now, development is not running schools. It's not running hospitals. I've done all that, and that's why I can say it's all that. They are all just manifestations of some undercurrent process which many of us don't even understand. They're just visible signs of something that we are doing. And they're easy things to do. It's easy to sue a school. I have done an evaluation for a major corporate, a multinational corporate, tragically built a school for 28 children and spent 10 crores. Now, do you call that efficiency? 28 children, didn't you know before you went there? And I asked them, they said, no, the local Gram Panchayat was wanting something visible. So it was beside the Bangalore-Mysore highway, and so we built that school there. Now, they came to me to consult what else to do with that school. Now that you have spent 10 crores on it. I'm not exaggerating a word of this. So we have a lot of such challenges. Let's understand, before you get into this, let's understand development, let's understand communities. Do you know what participatory rural appraisal is? Can you go down to the field, sit with people and ask them what they want? And can you ask them in a language which will get out the real answer and not what they perceive the answer should they give you? Because I can tell you how it works. If the government comes in a jeep to a village, the first question my tribals will ask is, which department is that officer coming from? Based on what department the officer comes from, our needs will change. If it is animal husbandry, I will want a goat or a bullock. If it is public health engineering, I will want a borewell. If that is the reality, rural India is very intelligent. And you go from a Jeep, you would have metamorphosed into a Toyota Fortuner. That's the only difference. But the people know how to modulate their answers. So they are going to ask what you can give. But is that going to really impact development? It's a question. So you understand development. So to me, development is a constant expansion of human capability, which means all of us have to develop all the time. The corporate has to develop its capability of understanding the social sector. Social sectors understand its capability of understanding corporates. I was asked to join a very powerful national post. And in the discussion, the Cabinet Committee of Appointments, they finally concluded I'm not good enough for the national sector because I'm too pro-poor. And when I asked the government, what does pro-poor mean? A very senior cabinet minister said, I'm too pro-poor. And I said, I demand an explanation. I thought that's my life's qualification. And they said, no, you're very anti-corporate. That is why we think you're pro-poor. And what they don't know is I advise one of India's largest corporates on social sector leadership. But the government intelligence, I think the file didn't get filled up. Our intelligence works only as good as that. I bring this up because that is not the way we look at, just because you articulate the views of the poor doesn't make you anti anything. You are just pro-poor, that's it. You're pro something, doesn't make you anti anything at all. So understanding development to me has now, in a very simple statement, is can we constantly create the human and social capital that this country needs? And how well can we partner to create that capital? And when you create human and social capital, whether you like it or not, there will be enormous economic consequences. And like Amartya Sen says, a nation should not look for creating economic capital and hoping for social consequences. We should dream about creating or work towards creating the human and social capital, which I believe will produce economic consequences. And so look at your activities and say, can I partner to build this first? And before I conclude, the last, understanding partnerships. As we're preparing our annual report this year, I was asking my team, can we enumerate the different partners we have worked with? It's more out of curiosity, I said, and I want to understand it and do some work on it. And we realized with 105 partners we worked with the last financial year. That's a huge list. And if you can box them, they're corporates, they're government, local government to national government. There are other civil society groups that we work with, and there are community groups that we work with. And when we put them all together, I realized, is there something common amongst all these partnerships that we can actually talk about, standardize and say, if we can, and as an academician today, I would believe that if we can't replicate this in a real life experiment, it's useless, it's only textbook. So can we really give a formula which can make partnerships work? So I have a very simplistic formula. I call it the 6 R's of partnership. The first R we ask is, and partnerships are driven by trust, mutual respect, and a sense of equality. Tell me honestly, ask this question and ask yourself in a very introspective, reflective mood, and give me an honest answer. If you're a corporate partner, do you truly feel equal to a small NGO working in a village? You'll always feel hierarchically superior. Whether you like it or not, the person who writes the check thinks he pulls the strings. Now that's a problem. Now that partnerships are never built that way. To me, partnerships, the first R of partnership is what resources that each of us bring to the table. I bring a resource. I may bring financial resource as a corporate, but the NGO brings intellectual resource. The civil society group brings experiential resource. You can never match it. If I have worked for 32 years in the field, I bring enormous experience of working with indigenous communities and rural communities of India. Now, that's a resource you can never cost, you can never match. If you monetize it, you can never afford it. Let me tell you that much. I know what intelligence costs today. I speak around the world and I know what I'm worth. So I can tell you what the civil society group's knowledge is worth. So don't undermine it. So I bring a resource, you bring a resource, let's be equal. Partnerships are equal. The state comes in, state brings in a resource. The next R is when you build a partnership, let's understand we both carry responsibilities into the partnership. Together we have to make sure the community progresses. All of a sudden the equation is the corporate sector always thinks the NGO should deliver on impact. Now you brought in a resource called money, I brought in a resource called talent, and together we have to make sure community progresses. Now can we change the measurables? That if I fail, it is your failure too. It is not just my failure and you walk out of the partnership. Together we have failed. That's what can happen in a partnership. So resources, responsibilities. The third is roles. Let's define roles. Now you don't come in and tell me how to do social development. I've had problems with, suddenly 6 people from, I won't mention it, because one of my classmates was heading a global CSR portfolio of that company. Company works in 70 countries. He suddenly felt somebody has to come and work with me. So he sent 6 of his employees on an 8-week engagement, NGO engagement. They messed up my work and left. I told that guy, I said, next time you ask me, I'm going to throw you out first from my calendars, from my address book. They come, they've been in the IT sector. You are experts in IT, I understand, I concede that. But what makes you believe that you're an expert in India's education for tribal people in the forest? Automatically doesn't confer any status on you. Now, if you don't come with the humility that I'm going to learn about education from SVYM or any NGO, and look at what do I have to offer, and together can we make things better? Now, that's a different approach altogether. That's a different paradigm. If the paradigm is, I know because I have been there, I think there's a problem there. We need to really understand. So there are roles which are different. Your role is different, my role is different. Let's understand it and work together. The fourth are, there are risks in every partnership. I risk a lot when I work with corporates. As much as you risk a lot when you work with me. I may run away with your money. There are so many things that can happen. So can we share resources? Can we share responsibilities? Can we share roles? Can we share the risks? And finally, remember, there are rewards for every partnership. Now, I can always say I did it myself. That's what most NGOs do. I think that's wrong. We should learn to say we did it together. And that's what is a huge difference. Because corporate also wants, I have realized one thing. Except one corporate entity I worked with, no other corporate has told me don't have my name. Only one corporate till now I have worked with who's actually put it on a contract saying I cannot speak about their partnership. And so I'm not telling their names. I can't even say that. They're one of the finest partners I've worked with. It's a family-held, large global company which said you shouldn't even tell anybody we are working with you. Now, I can tell you every other corporate makes a huge, one of the reasons of evaluation for the auditor is not to look at the money I have spent. He'll come and ask, where is the board? Where is the report? You left out my name. It's not about community or his education at all. It's about I taking care of the education of that community. That's all I want. It's not unfair. It's a fair demand. After all, let's concede. There's no altruism in CSR for many people. And there's nothing wrong. I'm a very pragmatic man. Now you bring a resource to the table to help people. Incidentally, you want to be known for helping people, that's okay. But let's be clear about it. No? Let's take the rewards and let's divide it appropriately. And the last R is we should have the courage to keep reviewing our partnerships. I would not like to work with a corporate for longer than what I should be with them. As much as a corporate should also not want to work with a civil society group as much as they should be with. When you can say I'll exit in 1 year or 2 years, I must also be able to say I don't want to partner with you after 2 years. No, that's not an easy thing which most NGOs can do because of the fact that we are at the receiving end of funding. It's a problem. The only way this can be changed, the paradigm can be changed, is for civil society to wake up and stop being donor-driven, stop being donor-dependent. It's a huge challenge. You have to bring in, I've actually come back and taken over my organization's mantle only to drive these changes. And today, I can tell you 40% of my revenues, which is substantially large, is completely self-generated. And by next financial year end, it will be 55%. By the time I lay down office, it will be 75%. And I hope that in the next 5 years, our business plans will work and will actually be 100% revenue sufficient. Thereby, corporate funding can be